Alright, folks, time to do my very belated review / analysis of the Avengers sequel, the Age of Ultron. To begin with, I grew up reading comics. I know all about the Avengers. Never actually watched the cartoon that was on Fox for a while because I was a little bit too old at that time to be into the Saturday morning programming. But, I grew up with it. I know the mythology. I know the characters. I haven't read a comic book since like the year 1998, so not really sure what's going on canonically. But I am familiar with the territory and the license and Ultron and the Vision and Scarlet Witch and all these guys, so I know the territory well. I'm not some neophyte new to the whole Marvel cinematic character lineage thing going on here. As far as the film, okay, first off, you really can't talk about the Avengers, the motion picture, without first talking about it as a product. And that is precisely what it is. It's not so much a film as it is a really long advertisement for all the Avengers toys and branded products and the next 14 or 15 Marvel movies. I mean, whether or not you like Disney, whether or not you even like the Marvel people, you got to give these guys props for coming up with like this extremely long in the tooth, drawn out schedule for these films. And very much like the comics, there's a ton of them coming out. If you miss one, they're all tied in the same universe. You're kind of left hanging as to what's going on. And you got the TV shows they're tying into the movies. So, I mean, they very much are using the old traditional comic book mechanic for their multimedia licenses. And whether or not that's something you want to find commendable or condemnable, in the eye of the beholder, but I got to give them credit, it is a very effective and unique marketing component, which I think more and more properties will probably take in the future. See, all that to say is, I will acknowledge the Avengers never really was designed to be great filmmaking, because it's not. It's meant to be really enjoyable, instant gratification, popcorn, celluloid, summer box office extravaganza nonsense. And I think as far as contemporary cornball, popcorn, big box office number cinematic nonsense, it's pretty decent, I guess. I mean, I think it's probably as good as the original. It's certainly better than, I think, the Spider-Man movies that were made by Sony with what's his name from The Social Network in it. I think it's a better film overall compared to those. I think it's better than The Dark Knight Rises. Of course, it's really not a great film compared to Spider-Man 2 or Burton's Batman or The Dark Knight or the two good Superman movies. But for what it is, it's pretty decent. It's entertaining. They at least try to do something a little bit different than did in the first movie, so I will give them credit for that. As far as the overall plot and the characters, I don't know, it seems like everybody's kind of tired of playing superheroes now. Like, you can just kind of tell Robert Downey, he's just kind of going through the motions. He's playing sort of a caricature of a caricature now. All the other guys know what they're doing is just silly and ridiculous. And there's really not that much character to kind of expand upon. And with this movie, when you have, like a dozen main characters to go through, there's really not that much room for character development to begin with. But I mean, this is pretty much what to expect. Like I said, they're not doing Schindler's List here. They're not trying to do Fellini. They're not trying to do Bergman or Kurosawa. It's just a stupid popcorn movie. And I think, it's probably as good as, the last Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit movie. It's probably as good as the Michael Bay's surprisingly not that awful Ninja Turtles movie. As far as just the general plot, I mean, it's okay. I mean, it had its moments. The action sequences are great. I really liked the Iron Man Hulk fight. I thought it was pretty hilarious, even though it did kind of harken back to 9/11 in a very weird, just kind of strangely designed sequence, which I'm kind of a little bit taken back by. Not more people are kind of talking about that. When you have the guys walking around with the white dust everywhere, that clearly wasn't symbolic of anything. It's amazing how we're not talking about that. We're talking about the what's her name, the Black Widow, and how she's not being portrayed in media because that is symbolic of misandry, or not misandry, misogyny. Like that. I'm really, it's late at night. Actually, it's not even evening yet. But got its pros and cons. They got to introduce a lot of new characters. The Vision, I thought it was pretty interestingly done. Not the way they kind of pulled them off. Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, really not that interesting. But I mean, really, the biggest thing to a fatal flaw in the entire movie, and feel free to disagree with me if you want to be contrary, is that I thought Ultron was a pretty weak villain. I mean, in the comics, it's really not that interesting. He's just a robot with really funny teeth, but in the movie, they kind of made him out to be like this rogue artificial intelligence program who makes robots. And I think the problem they made here is the fact they made him like a tangible figure. I thought this would have been a way, way, way better movie if instead of making Ultron like a physical character, they kind of made him like a ghost in the machine. Remember that movie from like the mid-90s? Where he's kind of like a really super powerful virus. Where he's making stuff go all maximum overdrive. And he's trying to, become like Skynet, become self-aware. I think that would make a much more interesting film to me. When you have the Avengers and this super powerful crew taking on a enemy combatant, which doesn't actually have a body. That, I think, would have lent itself to some really, really interesting ideas. But it didn't really go anywhere. And as far as James Spader's performance, I thought it was pretty weird. I didn't, to me, really come off as an effective villain. But at the same time, he just kind of played it off as being your standard Joss Whedon villain. This really, melodramatic, metrosexual villain, which is kind of like the stock of Buffy character. Every villain Joss Whedon writes is exactly the same. So I thought even as a really sort of goofy robot character, it kind of followed the same Loki prototype. And I think it's just a little tired and hackneyed and just really was nowhere near as effective as it probably could have been or should have been. Obviously setting up the Infinity Wars, the Infinity Gauntlet or whatever. Thanos, he's been sort of touted for the last 3 or 4 years, so all eyes are on that. Civil War coming up, which could be interesting, could not. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's a good, well, not really a good movie. It's a slightly better than average mainstream Hollywood offering. But I mean, at the same time, though, you're kind of wondering just how much more fuel you have in the gas tank. I mean, yeah, it's really comic booky, and it's given us, all of our middle school fantasies from seeing all these things we wanted to see back in the 90s, finally making to fruition. And I mean, it's cool, and it's better than it would have been helmed by most people. But at the end of the day, I'm kind of getting bored with the whole superhero motif. I mean, if you look at a movie like American Sniper, which came out earlier this year, which made like $500 million, I mean, I think that's kind of indicative that audiences, they want something different. Now, of course, the Avengers is going to make, $2 billion eventually. The last Fast and Furious movie made like $1 billion, so what do I know about the taste of American culture? But I think at the same time, this stuff, it's got to come down eventually. Eventually, people are going to get bored of the fantastical and the sequels and all the overproduced hoopla. Or maybe not. Maybe our culture just wants nothing but this. We're just going to have Star Wars and Star Trek and Avengers and X-Men and Spider-Man and Batman and Justice League movies from now until infinity. In fact, we probably will, because that's what Gen Y is into. But I don't know. I mean, it's good for what it is, but I still kind of want a little bit more of my cinematic experiences. And the thing is, there's so many great movies that are out there. Great documentaries, great, foreign films, great cinematic triumphs from overseas. There's a movie out called The Gangs of Wasseypur from India, which is just utterly incredible. That movie makes the Avengers look like absolute dookie, in my opinion. Of course, they're different genres, but I think they kind of follow the same formula. You got the ensemble cast, lots of action, lots of character development, but I think very character-driven as far as being an action film. But ultimately, I think that movie, The Gangs of Wasseypur, did it a whole lot better. And this movie is not even remotely in the same league as the absolute best neo-action movies. It's no Elite Squad, it's no The Raid. Like I said before, it's really not even The Dark Knight, it's not Spider-Man 2. It's okay, but just okay. So, really at the end of the day, I mean, if you go watch it, I mean, you'll be entertained, but if you watch it more than once, you're going to realize there's really not much to it at all, except for the instant gratification and the infantile thrill that comes from loud explosions and things getting beat up in slow motion. So it doesn't really offer anything beyond that, but you got to give props because it does that very, very well. As far as future of the cinematic Marvel universe, I really have no interest in Ant-Man or the Black Panther or Thor Part 45. But you know, for an event movie like this, and I'll stick around. I'll probably go see Batman for Superman just because I want to see just how much of a cluster schmoz it's going to end up being. But you know, they're going to keep making movies like this. They're going to make a whole bunch of money. They're going to make even more money off marketing and other branding tie-ins, and we're going to go see them. Why? Because we're consumers. We're consumers, and we have a taste for low culture. And as long as low culture is done a little bit better than average, like it is with the Avengers, I don't know what the big problem is.